Coogs House. All right, so we got USF tonight. We got to preview that, talk through that game all episode long. Plus, at the end, we'll talk some about the disrespect of the basketball program has gotten as the number one team overall as we're back into basketball for a little bit. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're a UH fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to hit subscribe down below. That we can get us in your news feed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. That's how you found us. If not, make sure you go find us there. We're giving away another set of, we're calling it a t-shirt, prize package, shorts to sparkle. The folks behind me want to tag in and hand some stuff out too. We're going to be doing that giveaway at 500 subs. It looks like we're getting close to 4. You guys are incredible. Keep hitting subscribe. Keep hitting upvote. Forward it to your friends. To be in the contest, we got to get to 500 subscribers. And you need to be commenting down below. Now, if you cannot think of something to comment with, tell me if you like Chex Mix or Gardettos. Now, in today's episode, we're getting back to basketball, previewing the USF basketball game on Wednesday night for the first couple segments. And then the last segment, we're going to look exclusively at kind of like what this disrespect means for Houston, kind of how they're going to fight their way out of that in the terms of the basketball program. So first segment, I'm kind of look down what I've noticed in watching 2 games at USF, what they do well or what their guys look like. Second segment, I'm going to kind of give away after those, my takeaway, after looking at that, my takeaways and what I think the game's going to look like. And like I said, that third segment is looking at just the disrespect that the Houston Cougars see. So USF is not great. And I say that because I think that their record currently makes people think like, oh, they're going to be no good, right? I don't know if they're quite no good, but they're certainly not Houston level good, right? Currently they sit at 7-9 and 0-3 in conference. And I think it'd be easy to watch that game like, oh man, this is gonna be another one of those games where Houston's putting up, record-breaking numbers. Win at Tulsa was the highest road win in conference in Houston history. And so it looks like, oh, they're 0-3, that could be that kind of game. But they lost to Memphis by just 7. They lost to Temple by 4, and they lost to Wichita State by 4. That is to say that they could very well, with a few ball bouncing here or there, they could be 3-0 in conference. Those 3 wins would also, I should say, put them at 10-6. And it's a very different basketball team all of a sudden, especially in factoring like they have some difficult, I'll say, pre-conference games. Most notably, they lost a closer one than it seemed at Auburn. I guess they lost by a total of 8 points, but they were ahead for a lot of that game, in the first half especially. And then we had a common opponent in St. Joe's, and they beat St. Joe's. Now, they didn't quite beat St. Joe's in the same kind of dominant fashion that Houston did. They did win by 13 points at a neutral site. And so I say that to say that like this is a good basketball team. They are, their engine of sorts is this kid named Tyler Harris. Tyler Harris is a 5'9" spark plug point guard. I think about like when we played Virginia and it all went through. The kid's name escapes me at the moment, but like they steered it all. It's the same kind of system with them. Tyler Harris is 5'9", just a $150, but he's a true senior veteran kid from Memphis, Tennessee. Kind of has a Tennessee toughness. He's also one of 2 kids on their roster. There's a ranked high school recruit if you're into that kind of a thing. He's their high scorer. He kind of does a lot of things, but I really, really worry about him in catch and shoot instances. Once he's got the offense going, he kind of ends up being the kick out man when something hasn't gone right? And so he shoots, I believe it's 37.5% on fairly high attempts, over 5 attempts per game. So it's the kind of guy someone's got to get out there with. They're big men. Like when you watch them on film, little man sticks out, big man sticks out. Russell Shua, he is 7 foot 260. I'd imagine a positive wingspan, big, long arms, and he is a giant. 6 out on screen against even guys like Auburn, Power 5 types teams as a giant. And so obviously he's number 4. He's hard to miss. But I'd imagine he has some impact on the game. They also started in their most recent contest Sam Hines, a 6'6 shooter. Keyshawn Bryant, kind of a 6'5", long, lanky, athletic guy. And then Selton Miguel, who kind of does a little bit of a lot of different things at 6'4". So fairly like traditional size distribution, right? Small guard, 3 medium-sized wings, and 1 giant. And so they also bring 2 more wing-sized guys, Jameer Chaplin and Ryan Carwell off the bench. And then Corey Walker's a 6'8", big, that it kind of feels like their own Jawan Roberts kind of big. He's not as good as Jawan Roberts. He's coming off their bench, but the same kind of concept where he's 6'8", but he's long, he's big, he's strong, he hustles, plays a lot bigger than that. All in all is to say that like they're built like a very strong basketball team. And so the matchups as I see it, starting point guard Ty Harris, probably get Jamal Shed matched up on him. Big man Russell Shua, I imagine he gets Jawan Roberts and Reggie Chaney and Javier Francis in some sort of rotation going through on him. Sam Hines is a 6'6 shooter, but because he's kind of their next biggest guy, I would imagine Sampson puts Jarace Walker on him. The only thing I could see is if because he's a shooter, he's constantly out of the movements and actions. And we've seen Jarace have trouble with some help side stuff, just, growing up kind of things. And maybe Sampson moves him out of that situation. But I think for the time being, he starts there. Keyshawn Bryant is, again, 6'5 guard, perimeter type guy with some moves. I think that's Tremont Mark, got his name all over it. Same kind of athlete. And then Selton Miguel, that leaves the 6'4", again, guy like, master, jack of all trades, master of none kind of guy. I think that's going to be left to Marcus Sasser to kind of take out of their instance. It felt like in the 2 games I watched in both Dartmouth and against Auburn, it felt like Selton Miguel kind of found his spot and like made really, really valuable contributions along the way. And so that's where I could see Marcus Sasser tagging in. Speaking of tagging in, if you need someone to help tag in with you these days, let me recommend tagging in with betonline.net. Now, betonline.net is the #1 source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, analysis, and more. You get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from pro football to the wrapped up college bowl season now, basketball. They got it all covered at betonline.net. If you listen to sports podcast, you can find those at betonline as well. It's the latest and fastest and easiest way to get your sports betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. Now, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the pro football weekend. It's like the wild card weekend extravaganza to a bunch of football games this weekend. However, if you took my advice on the national championship game, I'm sorry. TCU kept it closer than 13 points all year. I kind of thought they would again, and I'm sorry. But I'm just going to go through right here. They have the Seahawks favored by 10. They have the San Francisco 49ers favored by 10 points over the Seahawks. I'm saying the Niners and the points there. This can't be right, but I'm seeing a spread of 0. It's just a pick 'em with Jacksonville and the Chargers. Jacksonville's at home. The Chargers kind of lucked their way in and just had a big injury. I'm taking Jacksonville there. The Bills are favored by 10.5 over the Dolphins. We don't know if Tua's playing as of yet. And also, there's something like Team of Destiny feeling about the Bills right now. So I'm going with the Bills there. I'm taking the Giants on the road to upset the Minnesota Vikings. They got the Minnesota Vikings favored by 3, but the game is at 4:40 p.m., and we know what happens to Kirk Cousins after dark. I'm going with the Cincinnati Bengals, who are favored by 6.5 points over the Baltimore Ravens. That's a fun matchup because it's a divisional matchup, too. So it's the 3rd time those teams have played this year. But moreover, I think Joey B looked a lot better down the stretch of the season, and, Baltimore didn't. Dallas Cowboys head on Monday night to play Tampa and are favored on the road by 2.5 points. And while I see a team from Texas do well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this is setting up for the worst week of radio. You're going to have to either hear about the Dallas Cowboys collapsing and what are they going to do to fix all the things, and you're going to have to hear about how Tom Brady did all the things, even though they had a crappy regular season. I imagine that all happens because Tom Brady comes back to win this game at home why is this team with a losing record get a home playoff game? Can we fix that, NFL? Anyway, Cowboys laid an egg in the last regular season game. The Bucks have Tom Brady, and it's a home playoff game, and I just am not picking against it right now. Yeah, I hope I'm wrong. That's what I'm going with. So those are my picks for the weekend. Again, sorry if I'm wrong. I was wrong. The national championship game was right about the week before, though. So, take it as you please. But you should make all of those kinds of picks or bet against me at betonline.net. It's where the game starts. All right. So what I do have to say in looking at this game is I think while I'm impressed by South Florida after watching them play a couple games, in a way that I frankly didn't expect to be after looking at their statistics and stuff. I mean, on KimPom, they rank after 100 in both adjusted efficiency on offense and defense. Actually, offense is in the 200s, and they turn over at a very high rate, right at 153, which is like mediocre across all of Division I college basketball, not just like the kind of college basketball that like has a shot at the tournament or whatever. I expected to see kind of a sloppy basketball team. And truthfully, I imagine if I'm South Florida, they're probably kicking themselves over losing to Auburn. They probably should have won that basketball game. Instead, they turned around and lost it. St. Joe's looked to be the game that opposite happened, where they kind of should have won that game, and then down the end, they didn't lose it. They didn't fumble the bag there, and they ended up winning that one at a neutral site. The Dartmouth game, first of all, if you're ever scouting things, all Ivy League things are online for free, so that was really easy to find. That's why I found that one. They won that game close, but I had to say that some weird stuff. Anyway, they won that game close. I thought that was an impressive win at home. Kind of gutted one out for a number of different reasons right before the holiday. Memphis again was a close game. Memphis had to score 93 points to beat these guys. That's not something Penny Hardaway's club has had to do a whole lot against South Florida. Same with Temple, 4-point game. Same with Wichita State, 4-point game. So as I look across those, again, I thought I was looking at a bad team, and then I got here and I was watching a not so bad team. The big thing I think they want to try to do early is establish the big man, Russell Shewa, 7-footer. What they're trying to do a couple times in the Auburn game especially, which first of all, he's the type of big that outsizes Power 5 bigs. So that's the kind of size we're talking about here. But they would run all kinds of dribble handoff, interchange actions to kind of get the perimeter of the offense, 4 out, 1 in kind of stuff guessing. And then meanwhile, big man's doing work, and then he is sealed off on the inside on one side of the lane, and those dribble handoffs have it to where they can quickly dump it in before he gets 3-second counts. All of a sudden, he has sealed off half of the lane with his right hand or his left hand, and he's got said defender on his back hip. It's going to be really, really hard for Juwan Roberts or Javier Francis or Reggie Chaney to stay in front of that. The constant movement there along the perimeter means you've got to be constantly fighting to stay in front of the post. I'm sorry, I hit my microphone there, but because the moment you don't fight across from like right side of the lane to left side of the lane to stay in front of the post, they're going to dribble handoff, and then that guy's easy entry pass for dunk, right? And that's a really, really like simple way to do it. If you go back and watch like, this guy's not Wilt Chamberlain, but if you go back and watch like Wilt tape, that's the kind of movement Wilt was doing. The deal is Wilt was just not, counter to popular belief, he's not just 7 foot. He's also crazy quick and athletic and agile. And so like he would be dancing in the middle of the lane, right? That's why they extended the width of the lane, because of the guy like that, right? So interesting to see how they use that against Houston. I will say, to Juwan Roberts' advantage, he's certainly more fleet of foot. And so I think the dancing in front of to front the post, you hope to maybe get a 3-second call and have to force them to do something else, right? The thing that got them against Auburn, it kind of kept Auburn in the game early, which led to Auburn eventually getting the lead late. Again, this game was in Auburn, was lazy passes. The kind of passes that you'll see Marcus Sasser pick sixes back for dunks, kind of passes that Jamal Shell would be taken back down for lobs, and that kind of stuff that Cincinnati had moments of, but not a lot of. South Florida had a lot of against Auburn. And I don't think of Auburn as the same kind of defensive team as Houston is by any stretch. It looked more self-inflicted by South Florida. And if they do that kind of stuff against Houston, this could be one of those big bad days. I don't know if it will be. This kind of strikes me as more like an 18-point game, 16-point game, not a 40-point game, but we'll see. The big attention, once you've got that, they then, if you have to focus and double down that kind of stuff, They then get into the dribble drive and drop off kind of game because you have so much focus interior that they can kind of like nitpick and dive down and take away some of those driving lanes off the bounce. Because again, while Tyler Harris is just 5'9", he's super quick. And then the other three guys, Sam Hines, Keyshawn Bryant, and Selton Miguel, or I guess Jameer Chaplin when he's the next highest minute guy, are all about 6'4", 6'5". I guess technically Sam Hines listed at 6'6". They're all long. They can all put on the ground, and they can all get to the rim. And so, honestly, that's the kind of thing where Houston's going to have to make sure that the coach is saying is guard your yard, right? You got a yard either way. If I'm standing in front of you, I got to be able to cover you for a yard that way and a yard that way. And if I can do that and keep you going side to side, you're going to have to ditch the ball and do something else, right? Everyone on Houston, once they get into that kind of an offense, is going to have to guard the yard. And frankly, I feel fairly confident about Houston doing that as long as they're not trying to do stupid things like gamble for steals early. I think they can frustrate them in a number of different ways. Speaking of frustrating, one thing that both Dartmouth and Auburn had success with, Auburn obviously to a greater extent, was a full court press, a full court type of pressure. Houston's full court pressure is typically more of a man-based stuff, where Auburn want to do more zone-based stuff. But in principle, Hines is a little point guard, and so he's trying to get rid of the ball before he gets trapped because even with Shed and Sasser being 6'1" and 6'2" apiece, it's hard for him to see over traps. And so he's smart about getting rid of the ball, but he's also the guy that can like distribute the ball like a true point guard can. And thus, they had trouble with the press, to say the least, right? It's what brought Auburn back into it, and it's what kind of kept Dartmouth in it in that game. I don't know that Houston will need to, but I almost kind of hope they do because I'm interested to see what does the Houston press look like against a team that struggles with it, because we haven't seen, when necessary, a full court pressure out of Houston yet this season. I mean, Alabama and Virginia being two of the closest games of the year, right? Or not the kind of games where Houston needed to go to it. Frankly, Central Florida was the kind of team where I'm not sure I would have pressed, but I could be proven wrong there. And so, anyway, I wonder what that pressure would look like if Houston decided to turn it on like that. It's very anti-Sampson. Sampson doesn't go to it very often in the time he's been at Houston as far as a full court press goes. And again, when he does, it's typically a full court man to kind of just slow their offense down, because then they get down and they have like, okay, theoretically, if you have 30 seconds on the shot clock and you spend 8 of it getting across half court, you're already down to 20 seconds before you get into your actions. And that's the whole point of Sampson's press. It's not to get a whole lot of turnovers. If they were to turn that on, I wonder what that looked like, just because I'm looking at like what kind of stuff South Florida has done with it so far. All that is to say that South Florida will put up a good rebounding fight. They got great athletes. The way that the Singler kid, or the kid did from Cincinnati, had 5 offensive. He had 6 rebounds, 5 were offensive. That kind of effort, you'll see that out of Keyshawn Bryant and Selton Miguel a lot from South Florida. The difference is that they have a true giant inside as well, taking up like, think about like space on the rim. He'll be rebounding like half of the rim, and then you have like the other guys, athletes on the other half of the rim. So transitioning from the Cincinnati games to the South Florida games is actually interesting, because that will be a consistent coaching point, I'm sure. I do think this is a 18-point victory for the Cougs. I think it's the kind of game where they're up 12 at halftime. They figure some stuff out, talk about it, come on, extend it to 25-26. And then I, wonder if it comes back down to earth 20 with some last-ditch effort run from South Florida before it hovers around 18 or 20 or so. I don't think this is the kind of game where Houston wins by 40, but I don't think this is the kind of game where Houston's in a whole lot of trouble either. And in looking at Houston's schedule, bluntly, there's not a whole lot of those. And I don't mean that. I probably shouldn't count my chickens before they hatch. But Houston's playing at a very, very high level right now. After South Florida, they got Tulane, and Tulane, I guess, did have a strong week last week, but that game is not until next Tuesday after MLK Day. And then they have Temple the Sunday after that. Those are two teams that, again, have had a good first couple games in conference. We'll see what they're looking like at that point. But as it stands, that's a little bit of time to figure those kinds of things out. And so I think Houston's going to head into what's a kind of an extended weekend for the Cougs, undefeated in conference with a couple of very comfortable wins. And got to feeling good about that. We hope to see Ramon Walker. You know, I will say that it sounds like because they've been so tight-lipped about his injury, it might be something serious. I don't know. I have no insight on that. But I hope to see him back on Wednesday. We'll see. And if not, I guess we'll keep tabbing in and checking in to various press conferences to hear more about that. Biggest thing there is we want to get him back and healthy for the tournaments down the stretch. We can kind of make do, but his hustle and effort, if anything, just at practice and preparation for those is so important. Speaking of so important, let's talk a little bit about. Okay, let's just say it. At the end of the day, here, Houston is still somehow getting disrespected across the board. Now, Houston did on Monday. We talked about football on Tuesday. I should probably say Houston did come out on top of the AP poll, number 1 overall, followed by Kansas, Purdue, Alabama. Yes, the same Alabama. Tennessee, UConn, UCLA, Gonzaga, Arizona, Texas. In the top 25, you had, let me make sure I count because I'm not a math teacher. I'm a history teacher. Oh, almost got Missouri. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 Big 12 teams, none of which were Baylor. Baylor's still on the outside looking in with most receiving votes. They're probably, if you went all the way to 30, around that 26 mark. And then Houston at the top would be a Big 12 team next season. None of the other future Big 12 teams are in the even others receiving votes area. I just think it's interesting that like on KenPom and Net Rating, you actually see like the entirety of the 10 current Big 12 teams in the top 50. So like the other half of the conference kind of fills in between 25 and 50. And there's just a lot of disrespect if people are looking at Houston and they're saying, well, why is this team on top? And like citing schedule, when truthfully, their non-conference schedule is very, very difficult. They beat a Power 5 team in Oregon on the road at their place. That's not just kind of on the road. That's a long way on the road. They beat Kent State, who will make a run at winning the MAC. They beat St. Joe's, who will make a run at winning the A-10. They beat Oral Roberts, who will make a run at winning the Summit. Those are teams that won't be in the tournament, right? Like these are good basketball teams. They beat St. Mary's on a neutral floor. They frankly had a big lead in that game, I would point out, in the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth. And St. Mary's will make a run. I mean, last year they knocked off Gonzaga, right? Like they're the kind of team that's not scared of playing number 1 teams in the country. They were up 15 in the lone game. They lost against Alabama. Take that away. I take that as a positive. Like, okay, they've shown they can play. They didn't get run out of the gym. They can play with that team. And then they beat Virginia on the road. And then all their other games, the games that they're getting knocked for these like very easy, oh, you play in the American Conference. Like, okay, we line up and play and we beat them like you're supposed to beat them. Like, you want to say, well, everyone that's in the top 10 would run over Tulsa. Yeah, but we did run over Tulsa, right? It's not like there was some like close game that like, oh man, Houston barely beat. No, when you say every other team, a Power 5, a Blue Blood, a Kansas or whoever would run through Tulsa, Houston did. Central Florida has a top 15 pick on their basketball team, and handle business with them in a very competitive game and will likely, not to drop too much tea here. I think they do it again at the end of the month. So what I'm getting at is that like theoretically, all of these things are like, well, even let me go back to top 25, even UConn would absolutely destroy SMU. Yeah, but Houston did destroy SMU like you think the other teams will. And that's, I think, and I'm getting riled up here, but that I think is why I don't understand that criticism about the Cougs, because at the end of the day, it doesn't make any sense. You're telling me that another team would do exactly what Houston did. Anyway, we'll be talking about Houston and South Florida all night on Twitter, and then be posting the post game tomorrow. So make sure you A, subscribe so you get that post game. B, follow me at Painsworth512. That's PAINSWORTH 512 on all your social media handles. We'll be talking all things Cougs, Rockets, Astros, Texans, sneakers, whatever you want to do all the time. Make sure you find me at Painsworth512. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. If you're looking for another podcast to listen to, please make Locked On College Basketball your second listen of the day. They're doing a great job of covering the entire college basketball landscape over there. So make sure you go give Andy and Isaac a shout out and a listen. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Locked On Cougars is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In our case, the number one team in the country. Go Cougs.